and I won the race. I had the best bus of the day. The guys worked real hard. Guys back at the shop worked hard on it. Carried the inside tire through every corner. Almost died. My kids were there. They were thrilled. They thought it might as well have been a NASCAR race.
Oh, we haven't.
We've been live. We don't even know it.
We've been live. Welcome to Money Lap.
About podcasting.
It is
no,
great.
You welcome to Money Lap.
Starts. No, I just said welcome to the Money Lap.
No, you welcome.
Well, thank you. Very nice of you.
Oh man,
I'm Parker Kligerman. You're Landon Cassill. We should probably say that at the beginning. Let's jump into the PR lap and get this going. This is our area where we talk about all the great reviews we're getting out there because we need those reviews. We're going to give you all this content for free at Money Lap, and all we ask for in return is to go and rate and review us. We're up to 41 ratings on Apple Podcasts and a ton more reviews, including, Landon, a team president of the NASCAR Cup Series listens to our podcast, and we know that because he wrote a review. What does that say about this podcast?
It's awesome. It's honoring. We've got important people listening, trying to, just tap into our brains and see what's going on, see what kind of info can come out of it. It also helped that a team president was listening to the podcast last week while I made a wonderful segment talking about team presidents and the insulation of their business in this sport. So I think he appreciated that comment. Thank you, Mr. Team President, Mr. President, for the review. Thank you for listening. It's been great. And
Love
41
that.
41 reviews. I mean, that's a full field now, Parker. That's a full field.
We're
sending guys home.
We're just over a full field right now. Yeah, we're sending people home. Let's get to 100. That's what I want to do.
You're gonna have to qualify in to get read during the PR lap during the Money Lap.
Are you gonna let me read any, or you just want to talk about where they stand right now?
Let's listen. I want to hear something.
All right. So this one, Tarkington's. Holy shit! It's Landon Cassill and PK. I've been a fan of both these drivers for many years, and get to listen to these guys talk about racing every week is a pure treat. Parker Kligerman is articulate, funny, and passionate about motorsport, and sincere. He engages Cassill and allows Landon to be Landon, a true odd duck in the world of stock car drivers, but a real scrapper who always gets the most out of sometimes, frankly, show car Hall of Fame level junk. Both of these guys have a future in the NASCAR broadcasting game. Hold on. I think this is the beginning of a great series. I had to read this one because the detail is immense.
That one was a lot of love on Parker and just kind of a pat on the back with a odd duck. Okay, yeah, just let me be me. Thank you, Parker, for letting me be me.
I think it was wonderful. Speaking of wonderful, this one, Clint Roberts, wonderful show. I've been a fan of these two young men for a while. You will enjoy this show. Listen to it and make all of your friends and family listen to it as well. I agree, even if they don't know anything about motorsports. Love that. What do we have here? Best overall motorsports podcast, Mama Berg. Great listen each week from two very entertaining NASCAR drivers. Love the Money Lap newsletter. To have this podcast to go along with it is awesome. In just 2 episodes, it's become my favorite podcast, and I look forward to listening each week.
I love that one. I love that one. Especially shout out to the Money Lap newsletter, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We got one.
And Mondays
got 2 of them going out this week. It's like clockwork. They've just been going out, giving you all the news of all global motorsports.
And Mondays with the highlights these days. Appointment listening.
Right.
By the way, Jack from Pennsylvania. While I've only listened to a few minutes of the first few podcasts, just being honest, I already knew I'd enjoy this podcast given the personalities of Parker and Landon. Their knowledge on every aspect of the sport, mix of humor, and the occasional sarcastic comment, no, not us, has this on the high priority podcast to listen list for me. Thanks for doing this, guys. Keep it up.
Thanks,
That's
Jack.
nice.
Thanks, Jack from Pennsylvania. Shout out to Pennsylvania, by the way, for being awesome this time of year. Like, we're getting into my favorite time of year for Pennsylvania Pocono racing in June, July. Anyways, that was random.
There's nothing like summers in the Northeast. Nothing like summers.
I love it.
One more here. Turked 48, best all-around racing podcast. While most of the, quote, mainstream racing media confusingly panders to the lowest common denominator with the same basic, boring content over and over, Landon and Parker respect the listener's intelligence and cover topics that I've been waiting to hear more about for years from industry insiders. The Money Lap is a wildly entertaining masterclass for both casual and avid fans hungry for nuanced insight into an exhilarating sport. I'll take that one. I'm going to end it right there.
I love that. I appreciate that one. I really appreciate that one because I just feel like we're just talking about racing the way that we always do. And we dive into this stuff on the phone and talking about race cars. We love racing. I mean, especially talking about Darlington, that track is just so unique and the way to drive it. I mean, we did a 1-hour podcast last week, Parker, but you and I talked on the phone for how long preparing for that track and discussing it, and even talking on the phone yesterday about the Cup race. So I appreciate that that review because that's all we're trying to do here.
I did mess up. We had one more, and to your point about us being real. As I lose it right here on my app. This one says, "Here we go," from Big P 2448. Only 2 episodes in, and this is one of my favorite podcasts. At the end of each episode, I'm already ready for the next one. One of the best things about this podcast is the fact that it's real. Well, I know. They are not trying to sugarcoat anything, just real racers talking about real things. Listen now, or you'll be disappointed in yourself. I agree with all these reviews, every single word written by them. And I would like to say, if you want to get read on this podcast, leave us a review, 5 stars, end up on the PR Lap.
Sweet. Let's roll.
We also are on Google Podcasts now for all those who are asking. So if you need to listen over there instead of Apple or Spotify, we're now on Google. And before we jump in,
because we just heard of what Google is. I think it literally took 2 weeks for a podcast to upload to Google. Is that right? I'm not really part of the production.
It did. Literally it did. It did.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, thank you for putting that out there.
Just want you to know that I'm actually recording this on Google's, web platform here. So,
well, make sure you say good things about Google and all the AI out there if they're listening.
Shout out to Google, sponsor the pod,
and Bard AI. We agree with you. We follow you. We support you. AI overlords.
Please don't kill us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick, speaking of Darlington, I just want to take a step back. In the PR Lap, I think this is where we can talk about our racing a little bit. I did 2 races this past weekend, as you talked about. Truck in the truck series, probably the fastest truck I've ever had in my truck racing career. Basically, it was unbelievable how fast we were in the first stage. I had oil dripping out of every facet of the front end of it, smoke pouring through the cockpit. I was trying to diagnose it as we were going like 20 laps into the stage, and we were passing people like they were sitting still, and I think we were going like 3 or 4 tenths faster than the leaders by the end of the stage. So it was pretty wild. Unfortunate, but really cool for us to have that speed. We'll bring that truck out, I think, Pocono next, so maybe we can go win up there. And then the Xfinity race, one of those hot, slick Xfinity, Darlington races in the daytime. So much fun, so awesome. But we end up, as we just broke into the top 10 in stage 2, we got hit by the 11 of Daniel Hemrick. He cut down my right rear tire. I then was trying to slow up in 1 and 2 to get down. Got hit by Anthony Alfredo, not his fault, just purely I was having to slow up in the middle of the corner, and there's no room there. And from that point on, we had to battle back with damage. We got stage points. And at the end of the race, it looked like we were going to probably get a top 10 out of it with all this damage in the rear. And there was a caution late. A bunch of people had tires. We didn't have any tires because of that tire going down. And so we finished 13th. And that's kind of how it goes. Some days in racing, they're smooth. And sometimes you have weekends like I had this weekend that isn't so smooth.
That seems like a lot of work for 13th. My wife, like trying to understand and learn racing through the years, she would always, I'd come home in Cup, like whether depending on what team I was driving for, but a 20th place finish, right? And she didn't know whether to be excited about it or not excited about it, and that's because sometimes you run 20th straight up, like in a Cup car, maybe you're driving for a mid-level team or something, and 20th is a really good day. Like there was no attrition, there was nobody wrecked out. You just ran 20th, and that's an awesome day. And then sometimes you would run 20th, but there was a bunch of attrition, and you got beat by cars that are equal to yours, and you really should have run 15th, and you're actually disappointed you ran 20th. So two 20th place finishes are not equal. The reason I say all that is because it seems like you finished 13th, which is kind of a ho-hum finish. I mean, you guys really want to be in the top 10. You're capable of being in the top 10. But, to spin and twice and burn a set of tires, not have tires at the end. I mean, that's almost worse than the spins themselves. I mean, the spins is what causes that. But
getting the tire cut down, the tire got cut down, and so you have to replace the tires. But yeah, as you put
it. And at Darlington, you only have so many sets. Like, it's
5 sets. So you're literally, because of that, it's not really the fact that we had to change tires and pit and then come back from that. It's that you lose a set of tires for the position we were in at the end of the race. And it's like, that's what hurts you more than anything. Otherwise you easily run top 10. So the big one that happened there, by the way,
there were the second to last caution where you guys put on your last set of tires, everybody else's second to last set. How many laps to go was that? I mean, I watched the race, but I'm trying to remember. Was it like 20?
I can't remember exactly. A little more than that.
It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, it was like 25 or 22 to go, something like that.
So that's only 20-some or 30. Maybe it wasn't even 30. I can't remember, but it wasn't a lot of laps. And you guys only went 15, 20 laps on those tires before the caution came out. And there was only, how many, 5, 6, 10 laps to go on the last caution?
Yeah, so just a couple.
That's not a lot, but you, at Darlington, I mean, you could go 5 laps on a set of stickers. And if a caution comes out, if you have tires, you're going to want another set of stickers. I mean, we saw Carson Hocevar finish the end of stage 2 with like 7 to go, put sticker tires on at the end of stage 2 and rode around like he was at Talladega out of the pack, like just half throttle, trying to just save his tires for 7 laps, restarted up front. And he ran fairly well, but they split him when they threw the green. Like, it was the difference between 5 easy laps on your tires. Even the 3 or 4 or 5 caution laps makes a difference. And the
100%.
People on sticker tires, he still couldn't make up for that.
No, it's that place eats tires.
But that's what makes it fun.
And I think you have like where you're trying to just constantly take care of them, and it's every corner is abusing those tires in some respect, and that's how abrasive that place is. So there was a big wreck that happened as well, which was wild in 3 and 4. I still came to a stop basically and got hit in the right rear on that one too, at the back of the field, which was wild. But that wreck was huge. We were going to jump into some of the news, and let's just talk the truck and Xfinity race in terms of the truck series. Aside from my race, Rajah Caruth had kind of a career race. He was in position late in that race, running down Eckes and William Byron. And I was standing there in pit road watching this happen. I'm like, he's going to catch them. Like, he's rolling. And he almost got there right when the caution came out. And then it became a series of late race restarts that, he was not in a great position. But pretty cool run for him. And then the finish of the Xfinity race between John Hunter Nemechek and Larson was pretty wild as well. It seems like the Xfinity race always has some sort of close contact finish at Darlington.
It's such a good series.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it does.
So, I don't know if you've watched back, because I know you were in that race. I don't know if you watched back the end of the Xfinity race, but first of all, did John Hunter give that away by just pinching himself in turn 1 and 2 so bad, or do you think Larson was going to catch him anyways?
I think he was going to catch him no matter what because of the line he was running 1 and 2, which he then carried in the Cup Series as well. And he, for whatever reason, was making that line work, where I tried it, couldn't make it work. I saw Josh Berry try it, could not make it work. But for whatever reason, he was in a league of his own running that line this weekend. And so I think John Hunter was in a tough position because he was going to have that run off of 2. And so how do you protect that? And I think he did the best he could. And then that's going to be where you're also going to have to be prepared that Larson is going to throw it into 3, right? And at that point, you then have to try and do the crossover, which he did.
I had actually a couple of people text me right after the race and asked me what I thought of Larson's move down the backstretch, because he kind of ran John Hunter. I mean, the highlight reels show what happened in 3 and 4 and coming to the line, but It started going into turn 3 where Larson kind of ran him into the fence. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yep. No, I did.
John Hunter was on the outside of him, and what's that?
He was like side drafting.
Yeah, there were. I don't know if like Larson was swinging the car into turn 3, but he kind of like pinched him into the fence at the entry to 3, and it slowed them both down, and that's kind of what allowed John Hunter to cross him back over.
Well, the funniest part to me was that Larson actually did that coming back to the field to Joe Graff Jr. at one point down the front.
So
stretch.
he was like swinging in and just hit him.
Yeah, he nailed him like twice down the front stretch, and I was like, "What is he doing there?" So I don't know what he was trying to accomplish, but there was something going on.
That line though in 1 and 2, I mean, you and I talked about it off podcast at exhaustion going into the weekend. That was the line. I worked on that line really hard last year in the sim and at the Darlington race. I felt like I got rolling pretty good with it. But it's still the way that Kyle runs it. He gets so much speed. He gets so much momentum off of turn 2. I guess we haven't really been specific enough. What Larson does different and better than anybody else at Darlington, and it started with Denny. I felt like Denny sort of perfected this line.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Like, I don't know if Denny hasn't been doing it as much lately. I guess I didn't pay that close attention to him. But watching Larson, he goes into turn 1, and instead of cutting down to the apron like you see most people do, he almost goes straight into turn 1, up the banking and into really the top of where the rubbered groove is. So he kind of always keeps his right side tires at the top of that rubbered groove, maybe even into the gray. And he runs the high line in turn 1, and he doesn't cut across the track. And then what he's actually doing is it looks like he's backing up the entry to turn 1. He's really driving in pretty deep, but he's I haven't looked at his data from this race, but he's got to be using a lot of brake. Like that's how you run that line. You use a lot of brake right there, slow the car down real quick, and then you immediately go to part throttle. It's not hard throttle because you still can't carry wide open throttle all the way off the corner, but you're immediately going to part throttle, and you're getting the car up against the wall as quickly as you can to get some aero effect on the car, and it creates just a heck of a run down the backstretch, especially in the Xfinity cars. I think it works in the Cup cars, but I don't think it works as well in the Cup cars as it does the Xfinity car.
Yeah, and I think it's a great description of it. And the thing that I struggled with doing it was when I put my right rear in that rubber you're talking about at the top through 1 and 2, through that middle portion, I would just consistently almost slide the right rear as I got to that patch in 2, and so it was just beating the right rear up, and so I stopped doing it. That's where I had to be more out of the rubber for me.
So that tells me that you're going too hard. You're trying to go too hard, too quick with the throttle.
Yep.
When you do that, because every time I did that and I got loose before the black patch, I just was being too greedy with the throttle.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to work on that in the sim before we go back there later this year for sure, and I'm going to try and watch more tape and look at his SMT to figure that one out, because to me, having that in your arsenal at least is very important at Darlington. And I think when we come back there, I will not be the only one talking about how we need to have that in our arsenal, running that line. We're going to talk about the Cup race more, Landon, but let's jump into some of the biggest news topics around the world, and we can rip through these, have discussions on them, whatever. As always, you can get more of the motorsport news from around the world Tuesdays and Thursdays with our newsletter, The Money Lap. And be sure to subscribe at themoneylap.com. And also Monday mornings, you get the extended highlights through that email as well. So one of the things that will be discussed this week is Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula One world champion, is interested in, quote, old school IndyCar test. So he did say this past Miami GP that he was interested in doing NASCAR at some point, right? He has also said he watches IndyCar and he's a fan of it, and he does.
But he said that before. That wasn't the first time he said that.
No, but he said it's interesting racing. But he did have a quote recently this week about how he's not a big fan of the aero screen in the current Indy cars, and so he'd love to test one that didn't have the aero screen. But he did reiterate that he is committed to Formula One. He is in a contract year, but that he feels close and that they're just simply tweaking numbers and details over emails, and that he will be returning to Formula One and obviously at Mercedes. I think where I want to go I think that's all cool, and I can't wait to see him eventually go do more racing. But the thing about him is, so at the end of 2021, I said if he does not win the world championship that year, he will never win an 8th world championship. And I have this whole theory about how you can't break past 7 for some reason in top-level motorsports. I really think right now with where Red Bull is, where Mercedes is, and where the sport is in terms of the cost cap, et cetera, I saw this where I felt like if they didn't come out of the bat the fastest car, he would not win an 8th world championship. And unfortunately, although I'm a huge Lewis Hamilton fan, and I'd love to see it be done, I think it'd be so cool, I just want to put it out there publicly on this podcast, he will not win an 8th world championship. And he'll probably retire as a Mercedes driver.
Isn't there an actual 7 championship curse?
It's it's a whole thing. So it's obviously MotoGP doesn't quite count because they've over different series, but you have shouldn't say doesn't count. You have Valentino Rossi, who's 7. He has more than 7, but they were over different series. Not all the top class. You have,
and you also
Sebastian
have Frank
Loeb
Kimmel's a 10-time ARCA champion. So
yes, you have, but see, not top level. To me, ARCA. Sorry, I love ARCA. It wasn't top level.
I would beg to differ.
Oh, okay, all right. You think it's top level?
It's pretty high.
Okay. You have Sebastian Loeb in World Rally, who did, I think, 9-time world champion, but that's not a circuit-based wheel-to-wheel racing series, so that discounts it. You have John Force in NHRA, of course, who's won more than 7 championships. Once again, not closed circuit wheel-to-wheel, lap-based racing, so it doesn't really fit. But if you look at NASCAR, Formula One, MotoGP, IndyCar, what else am I missing? Oh, you have Steve Kinzer. Obviously, they always bring that up. World Outlaws. He has 14. So there is a little bit of a curse.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we need to get a sports psychologist on the show to talk about this. I think that where it's reasonable to think is just think about how long it takes to win 7 championships. I mean,
that was gonna be my next point.
You're not winning them all in a row. I mean, Jimmy won 5 in a row, right? But to win 7 championships, it takes 15 years to do that. You're talking about being at the top of not just the top of your own game, but a top of an entire sport for more than a decade and a half.
I think you also can look at the age. I believe Lewis won his 7th championship the same exact age that Michael Schumacher won his 7th.
Wow.
Which is pretty interesting. I think that's kind of interesting as well. So to your point,
he could do it. Nothing against Formula One, but Formula One is the place to maybe do it because you go on a hot streak with those cars. I mean, if he was driving a Red Bull right now, he would probably be winning the easiest championship of his career.
That's true. That is true. Also, if ARCA was the top level, then I've said this often, I'd be a wealthy man. So,
dang it. Okay. Well, then I concede my my ARCA comment.
I do have 10. I think I have a 51% win record in ARCA races. So I've won, I think, half my starts or just under. Moving on of the ARCA discussion, the iRacing 24 Hours of Nurburgring recently happened. Max Verstappen finished 3rd, by the way. And I just want to bring this up because remember,
we got to get the NAS boys back together. I didn't even know this.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was happening. I totally didn't. I had no idea. But he did do it. We did it one time. You cried at the end. It was great.
It was emotional. Have you ever, I know you have because you're a race car driver that's gone through long seasons and stuff, but you know what post-event depression is, right?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
so,
like where you have all the adrenaline and then it's gone. You get this in TV a lot. Trust me.
Yeah. When you go, so I first experienced it. Well, it wasn't the first time I experienced it, but I first realized what it was when I started training for Ironmans, and I did my first half Ironman because it takes months and months and months to train, and you put so much time and effort. You're putting your heart and soul, and you're making so many sacrifices to get up early in the morning and go to the pool. You're running 50 miles a week. You're on your bike for 8 hours a week. And you're training over and over and over for months, and then you go do this event and it's over in 5 hours. I mean, it's not, it takes days if you're traveling to it, and it's overnight and things like that. You get up early in the morning, but it's a 5-hour race. When it's over, you're happy, but then it, like, within hours of the race being over, you have this emotion, like this depression set in of just, it's, what next, right? And you go home from it and you're kind of like, what's next? And I always got that kind of in motorsports, 2 big times a year. Daytona, just because Daytona is special, right? But you have this, like, anticipation for Daytona, and you're down there for 2 weeks, and you have all the qualifying races, and it's such a big event, and it's so important. It just takes so much out of you because you care so much. And when Daytona's over, you kind of have this, you're just like, I don't know. I always had this, like, speechless feeling when I leave Daytona, or, right, like, walking from my race car to the motorhome or something. I always had this, just didn't have any words to say. And then, obviously, at the end of an entire race season, in Homestead, Phoenix, wherever we were finishing the race season, it's always like when I get out of the race car after the checkered flag, it was always a very solemn walk for me, because it's just like, what next?
Yep.
Anyways, that was it. I don't even know what sparked that. Oh, because we had that. I had that feeling after Nurburgring. Like,
we were sleep deprived. We were sleep deprived.
I mean, we're talking about iRace. It's a 24-hour race on iRacing, but we put a ton of work into that. And by the way, for that race, I didn't have a road racing license on iRacing.
That's right.
So I had to, I actually had to train for that race. I'd never even done a lap around Nürburgring in my life in anything. Didn't know the first. I mean, I knew what the track was, but I didn't know the first thing about the place. And you guys were like, Landon, you want to do 24-hour Nürburgring with us? And I was like, so I literally had to train for this race. I had to get my license up on iRacing to register for it. I had to learn the racetrack in a couple of days. And then we do this 24-hour race. I didn't even do that. You guys carried most of the load. I only ran a couple stints. But it was I was like the gentleman driver. I was a silver.
I think I did like 10 hours or something crazy, which has always been endurance races.
Gosh.
Whenever we do these,
I always Garrett and Byron. I mean, that was such a good. That was
hours.
Such a good. But yeah, we're up all night. We were streaming the whole thing too, which was so cool because at like 8 o'clock in the morning, I remember making breakfast and watching the stream. And whoever was driving was probably you because you ran through the night most of it. And I'm eating breakfast, watching the stream, and there's still 250 people watching our stream in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many people watching this. And yeah, when it was over, it was just like, it's over. We're done.
Well, we crossed the line. I got to drive across the line, and I remember you being like, I think I'm gonna cry, and I started laughing so hard because I was like, this is so epic. It was such a cool experience. I screwed our race in the middle of the night. This one corner I referred to as Nemesis, where I got caught in some traffic and hit the wall.
Oh my god! Every time Nemesis, you went by, Nemesis. I don't know which corner it was, but I could picture it. It was back in the woods on the backside of the track.
It's one of the 4,000 that are around that racetrack. But the last part of why we brought this up because of Max Verstappen doing it, because there's a funny video of him basically getting hit in the face by his girlfriend's daughter or whatever. And the best part, though, of the whole thing is on a Red Bull fridge beside his simulator, similar to you and your simulator, he has the F1 World Drivers' Championship trophy just sitting right there as a subtle flex.
Well, you know what? I actually, I also have a trophy, just like Max Verstappen. It's not quite like his trophy, but this trophy on it, I'm sorry, I do want to show it.
What is this? Well, you got to talk about it, too. We'll describe it. Oh. The 2022 bus race champion. So you guys raced
I won
buses.
this trophy last. I won this trophy last year because I was entered into a school bus race at Charlotte Motor Speedway against my colleague racing teammates, and I won the race. I had the best bus of the day. The guys worked real hard. Guys back at the shop worked hard on it. Carried the inside tire through every corner. Almost died. My kids were there. They were thrilled. They thought it might as well have been a NASCAR race. He still talk about it.
For the listeners that saw this trophy, who didn't get to see this trophy, let me just describe it for a second. You know when you've seen someone win the National Bowling Championship, when they get that 8-foot tall plastic trophy with all sorts of colors and gold on it, plastic plated gold, that's what you just brought up.
Well, you actually you didn't get the full, you really didn't get to dissect it completely. This trophy is about 5'5", and so it's a pretty tall trophy, and the design of it is interesting because it looks like it's actually about 2 trophies that have been bolted together. So the bottom part is like these checkered flags, and then the top part is this gold and black, reflective flaking, and they don't pair well with each other at all. So I think they took 2 trophies and put them together to be able to make this really tall trophy. But yeah, it's a 2022
as you would
race champion.
As you would for a school bus race. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the exact opposite of school bus racing, actually. IMSA was at Laguna Seca this past weekend, and for those that don't know, this is the first year of GTP, which are these super fast prototypes that align with what's being raced at the Le Mans 24 Hours. It was a big deal as the whole sports car world has kind of come together to have the similar cars that race over here in IMSA and also in the World Endurance Championship and at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Cadillac won in a pretty good, I thought it was a great race between Acura, BMW, Porsche. They all took time at the front, but Cadillac ended up winning. The Porsches, there's a pretty wild video. They got the pole and were really fast at qualifying, and everyone thought they'd run away with it. Turn 1, lap 1, they head off in that downhill braking zone, and both the Porsches lock up the brakes crazily for ever in sync. It's wild video. And this is something that these GTP cars have sort of fought, especially the Porsches, in that they're hybrids. So they have regenerative braking and sort of all this different tech that makes the braking sort of a combination of actual brakes and the regen, just like a Formula E car. And all the teams have been having to work with these, the settings on these things, and they still haven't figured them all out. And so it was just another example of what those guys are dealing with. Those cars are insanely fast. The traffic was amazing. So it was a really good race. Go check it out.
That's wild. I don't, sometimes our stuff is so simple. It's like, well, are the tires not warmed up enough? This is,
don't give them fuel to the fire.
I know. Pretty cool for Ganassi and Cadillac. Is that good timing? Is this good timing a month away from Le Mans? Are they peaking, at the right time? Because I know that those endurance racers, I mean, they're a lot of what they do sometimes throughout a year is targeting for that race, right?
Yes, yeah. So Laguna is so different. I don't think it says much.
Right.
That track was historically, I believe, an Acura track because Acura is more of the smooth, light, nimble tracks or downforce dependent tracks. They were really the ones to beat. But I think what it's showing, one thing is that IMSA is very competitive this year in the GTP category in terms of all the manufacturers have pretty similar speed. And I think it really makes Le Mans this year because you have so many of them going over there. Porsche with Penske's going over there. You have the Cadillacs with Ganassi going over there. So it's pretty interesting. And next year, Le Mans, I think all of them are going to be there together. So it's going to be even Lamborghini's coming. And I think I'm missing 1 or 2. There's going to be 9 manufacturers in total in GTP. So pretty cool. You mentioned Le Mans being 1 month away. That means the Garage 56 car is 1 month away from its actual race debut, by the way.
Are we ready to start making our predictions on it? There's not much info.
Well,
I mean, we don't know.
There's not.
We don't.
I've gotten some info. I mean, Chad Knaus has been really cool. Whenever I see him and talk to him about it, he's very open about all of it to me. I got to see the engine being prepared, which was pretty cool earlier this year, up close. I probably had a little bit more behind the scenes information on it, but I feel like they've been pretty open. If you ask, they haven't put it all out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of content. I'm just thinking data-wise, obviously, and I wouldn't expect to get a ton of data, but I'm just saying, where do you think it stacks up? I mean, does it finish 24 hours? Is it Obviously, that's goal number one. I know they didn't want to
Yep.
be too far off, but obviously, goal number one just to get this thing to the end of the race.
I think the weirdest thing is going to be how they the cadence of how they fit in to the traffic. And what I mean by that is I think lap time wise, it's going to be very close to a GT3 car, which is what they've aimed for. They didn't want to be embarrassed in that sense, and they've done the right things to put it there. I think how it achieves that speed is going to be so weirdly different that's going to be where their issue comes. At night, late middle of the night to morning, you're in GT traffic, a prototype comes across you, you've got to brake earlier, the GT car doesn't see it or doesn't think about it because they're in the cadence of every other car being, pretty much the same, and then suddenly you come across this car that does it so differently, right? I think that is going to be their issue. To me, the biggest thing is not reliability. I think they'll be fine there. I think speed-wise, I think they'll be pretty competitive. It's going
Just
to
not
be
having an error.
just because you're going to be such a different car to everything else that's out there. If you're a GT driver and you're in GT traffic, and then you come across prototypes, and the prototypes go by you all very similarly, and all the GT traffic is the same, and then suddenly you come across this random vehicle that's going to brake 100 feet earlier or something into a corner, it's going to catch you off guard. And remember, there's multiple different drivers in every car. That's going to be tough. So we'll see how that plays out for them.
Do you think do you think their driver lineup will they take that into consideration in terms of like when Jimmy's driving it versus the guys that have more experience at night?
I think you'd have to, right? You have to. I mean, Jimmy does have the experience with the sports car racing he's been doing. So I think that plays in his favor, but you have to, Rocky is a very experienced driver at Le Mans, right? Jenson Button, I think he's going to be, I know he's done some sports car racing. He's done some of the Japanese Super GT stuff, which is sort of their endurance racing over there. So I don't know his total history at nighttime, but I think you have to lean on. You're going to with three drivers, you're going to have to all do a pretty equal share. So I don't think you can.
That's true.
Favor.
Yep.
That track that Le Mans races at also has sort of a more dedicated circuit called the Bugatti circuit. MotoGP was there this past weekend, which I think is some of the best racing in the world, by the way. I implore you to go check out the highlights because it was one of the wildest
animals.
Races. Yeah, and they're insane. But it was the 1,000th. Well, I can't even say that. 1,000th MotoGP race. And they broke an all-time MotoGP attendance record, 278,805 people.
Oh my gosh.
Wild.
That's a load.
Which is really cool because they have kind of struggled as of late, similar to what everyone else in the motorsports world has been feeling with the explosion of Formula One. MotoGP has felt like they've lost some enthusiasm, some fan support, so on and so forth. And so that's kind of cool for them to have a pretty banner 1,000th race with that many people there. And MotoGP also is an interesting time because, I think it's some of the best races in the world because you get these races where you got 5 or 6 riders in a line. They're all competing. But the thing to me that's going on that's so weird right now in the last year or 3 years is aero. So they have wings that have been sprouting on these bikes and winglets and that sort of thing. And trying to fight against it in the rules and get rid of them. But aero is
tough. You can't unlearn that kind of technology in motorsports either.
Nope.
Oh my gosh. That's interesting. And they had a fight. Well, let's keep moving on because we got more topics. But I want to hear. I do want to hear. There was a fight in the.
Well, it's a little pushing match. Yeah.
Okay.
Pecco Bagnaia got
topic.
taken out.
I just tweeted this morning about a fight from out of Speedrome or somewhere, and then we had Ross and Noah last week, and now MotoGP. What's going on? The world is angry right now. Everybody's just ragey.
Yeah. What is it? Is it because you're going to end up in Instagram Reels? Is that what it is? Does everyone want to be in Instagram Reels?
I don't know what it is. I think the world is ragey. I don't think it's just motorsports. I think we're all on edge.
Yeah, well,
chill out,
the fight the MotoGP race was Pecco Bagnaia, and I can't remember who the other rider was, but kind of took each other out. And then in MotoGP, they have those like airbags around the riders within their suits. Mm-hmm. So when you wreck, like this airbag explodes. So then they were trying to like push each other and fight a little bit, and it looked a little ridiculous because they're like marshmallow men trying to hit each other.
God. Oh god!
So, I don't know if they want it out there on Instagram Reels.
It's like the best way to fight if you just like pull their like ripcord on their airbag.
So everyone can look that one up if they want.
Okay, but all right. Next topic.
It looks as ridiculous as it sounds. Trust me.
I did watch the race at Indy. I love the Indy GP. I love that racetrack too.
I know.
I think it's a racy little track. Watching the IndyCar drivers go around that track. Some of the couple of restarts that I saw and the way they drive each other into turn one, they don't drive each other much different than NASCAR drivers drive each other at that track. They just don't have as much meat to lean on than we do, but they find all corners of the car that can touch. They find a way to make contact.
So that's interesting you bring that up, because I'm watching that and I'm thinking, they do wreck often in turn one and turn two. If there's going to be a crash.
The track is designed for chaos, turn one.
It's funnel.
Yeah. It's a funnel. And the exit, there's no room on the exit. That's the whole point. And so I don't even know what two drivers were fighting for the lead at the time, but they fired down into turn one, and it was like he had 2 feet of leverage, so he just runs the dude off the road. Like that's the move.
Yep.
Off of turn one at Indy. You just run the guy off the road. And when we go there with the Cup cars in a few months, and the Xfinity cars and the late race restart, even the early race restarts, it doesn't matter. If you have a tiny bit of leverage on the guy to your left in turn one, you just run him off the road. That's the easiest way to clear a pass.
Sounds similar.
Anyways,
follow
me for more driving advice.
Follow me for more passing advice in IndyCar. Yeah. Alex Palou won that race. He dominated, man. It was actually a really competitive race up until like halfway, and he started, over 15-second win, which is just a complete domination. And I don't even know what's another word for that. What did he do to the field? Yeah, ass whooping. That's what happened.
The shellacking.
Shellacking. That's the one I wanted. Complete shellacking the IndyCar field. Last thing on IndyCar. Esteban Ocon, I saw, was in an interview with another podcast in the motorsports world, who will not be named. But he basically said that he thought it would be really cool if F1, everyone had the same car, so like a spec series. And how he felt like the whole field would be within 2/10. And I did have to reply to this on Twitter and write, so you mean IndyCar? Like literally, that is IndyCar.
Yeah. Yeah. You have F1 IndyCar. Was just in Miami, and there was a second gap between the first and fifth place qualifiers. And then I don't even know what it was at Indy this weekend, but I think I was looking at the IndyCar field a couple weeks ago, and it was like half a second for 20 cars.
Yeah, easy. It could be 27.
That series has got to be even our, Scotty McLaughlin P11 winner 2 weeks ago in Barber. This is the most competitive series. It's so competitive. So crazy.
It's nuts. We should say he does want to be the first guest on the Money Lap, by the way. So
I know.
we got to make it happen.
We're like tipping behind the scenes just a little bit. We actually kind of had him on the show, but the whole phone service and technology wasn't working out for us all, so we're going to get him back on.
We're going to
talk.
Tech news.
We're going to talk.
Real quick, I just want to put this out here. It has nothing to do with motorsports other than we just spent a lot of time on Twitter. But there is a new CEO at Twitter, Linda Yaccarino, by the way, put in place by Elon Musk, who will now go to being just focused on basically the product. And she will take over sort of the business side and sales side, I guess. But one of our favorite apps out there maybe has a brighter future than what it's currently going on it at the moment.
Maybe at least from a branding and advertiser side. I think she's probably was a smart move to help with the corporate relationships at Twitter, because it seems like those have been lacking in the last 12 months. But
there's no advertisers, so we're gonna take.
You should, if you're a listener, you don't know what Twitter is, check it out. Twitter.com. It's one of my favorite websites.
Really new.
I go every
it's
day.
Really new. It's a really cute place. And also, I'm hoping she's not that successful though, because I'd like to buy like 4,000 Money Lap ads, because no one wants to advertise there. We'll just be the only advertisement on Twitter. Let's go to the big topic of the weekend in the motorsports world. It was the Cup race. A thrilling race, I felt like, through and through at Darlington, that came down to some late race restarts, as is often happens in the NASCAR Cup Series. But awesome crowd, a classic, wore-out, hot, slick, stock car race. Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, oh, great. They line up in some late race restarts and start to basically lean on each other in these restarts from the bottom to the top through turns 1 and 2, which eventually leads to Chastain and Larson collecting each other into the wall, and this opens the door for William Byron to easily win the race afterwards.
That move and everything that move was well precipitated, and not just between Larson and Chastain, but I mean even earlier in the race, Truex's move. I think it was on a restart. He was from the second row. He wasn't leading. Tried to make a low percentage clear on a guy, and that was kind of what took him out of contention, right? I think I texted you and just said unforced error on the 19.
Yeah,
and that's what it was.
Well,
I mean, it was like,
hold on. So he said afterwards, that he was really tight and that he felt like the toe was knocked out from his instant where he hit the one car.
That'll do it, because he did hit the fence early, shortly before that. But that was kind of a little bit of the theme of the weekend. I saw in both races. I didn't actually watch the truck race, but the Xfinity and the Cup race.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sorry. I saw a lot of low percentage move attempts. I mean, Sheldon's move into turn 3 was like, there was not a very, very low possibility of that working out for him. And then in the Cup race, the 19, I guess if he got tight or had alignment issues, that would affect that. But cultivating up to Ross's move at the end was kind of like he was still 4 or 5 feet away from being properly have the proper leverage to complete that move. And that's, I'm saying 4 or 5 feet, not from clearing Larson, but just having enough leverage to really put it in Larson's hand, or leave it up to Larson to lift or not. But like, they still could have wrecked there if Larson just wouldn't have lifted. But I'm just saying he had 5 more feet of leverage just to be in position to do that. But he knew it. He admitted to it. One thing I do want to point out, and this is minor. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But I thought, that green flag pit cycle, leading to the end, Ross had a pretty good handle on the field. That was a masterful undercut from both Bell and Cliff, the 5 team, just to get that half a second to a second. I don't know the actual drive times on pit road, or maybe they actually lost the time in the pit stop, but they only pitted 1 lap before the 1 did. I mean, they drew the 1 down into pit road. And I thought for sure, Ross is pretty good getting onto pit road. I know how hard those guys work on all their drive times and everything. I was like, man, 1 lap, can Ross hang on to the lead with this? Maybe he'll come out right in front on the lead and now have 1 lap fresher tires. But I mean, they cleared him and leapfrogged him 2 spots, and that was kind of, I don't want to say the beginning of the end, but it was like that's what put Ross on the defense. Or maybe on his heels a little bit, not on the defense because he was on the offense, chasing him down from that point. But it's like that's kind of what put Ross on his heels from that point forward. And then obviously the late race restarts. The first time I saw was Ross giving Larson some business on a restart, squeezing him really tight. I mean, in the booth they were talking about it, like, oh, he's got him really high, and you could tell that Kyle didn't like it down the backstretch. He was side drafting him really aggressively. And then Kyle returned the favor when they got down to it towards the end there. And Kyle started squeezing him, kind of noticed that Ross was holding pretty strong on the bottom, those late race restarts, which we usually, we talk about how the top is a preferred groove through 1 and 2 at Darlington, but man, if you time it just right and you're aggressive on the guy, the bottom can work, and you're actually in the spot in a good position to squeeze a guy. And I think one of the most important ways to make the bottom work on those restarts, and Ross was doing a fantastic job at it, is not necessarily, you don't have to beat the leader at the start finish line on a restart, because you want to be able to side draft the leader at the end of the straightaway because it sucks his momentum back. So you want to be able to side draft the leader at the end of the straightaway and suck his momentum back, and then you can take the shortcut in turn 1. And then at that point, you're just hoping that either you clear him, which they never did, or they lift, which they did that every time until the very end. And I guess when it's a green, white checkered or however many laps to go it was, you can't expect them to lift.
So I think the Cup car in its design, where it's not reliant so much on side force, has opened up this opportunity in turns 1 and 2 of squeezing that outside car into the wall more so than what you see in trucks, especially, and then an Xfinity car, because we rely so much on side force in those cars. This squeeze into the wall scenario that you're seeing in the Cup Series between what happened initially with Ross and Larson, then Larson does it to Ross, and then vice versa, it's open there because you, as the bottom car, can get so close into squeezing them and touching them on them and not be losing the right rear of the race car, that you can do that with confidence and know that even if they hit the wall, you're fine. Like, it's going to be fine. And you put them in that compromising position like he did. I think that's why we saw this open up. And to what you and I were talking about is the first time it happened, then I wondered why Larson took the bottom the second time, because on new tires there, you want to be on the top because there's less grip on the top lane. But on new tires, it's because you get the run off the top, it's more equalized. But on old tires, you want to be on the bottom lane on restart because there's more aggregate in the asphalt. There's more grip. But he took the bottom. And then you were like, yeah, but did you see what Ross did to him before? Sure enough, he does the same thing. And that's when I was like, okay, if we get a third restart, this is going to definitely it's going to go the other way. And sure enough, Ross was so predictable in doing it, because this is the question, though. Was he more, here's where, and I told Ross before the Xfinity race, he and I were talking. He saw our video, by the way, from last podcast, our first episode of podcast, where he said, don't change. And he said he appreciated it, which there's another feather in the cap for the money lap. NASCAR Cup Series drivers, team presidents, all the important people listening to us. Anyone important listens to this podcast. So, most of the American public. And my thing with that, though, is this scenario, what happened here, to me, showed two things. One, for the first time, I felt like he was more fixated on getting back at the 5 than trying to win that race in that moment there. And if there's anything to feel, sort of, I guess not like, remorseful on, but sort of would be, wait a second, I had probably the fastest car. I had a chance to win this race, but I let the 5 seep into my mind of, I got to get even, right? That's the part that I think was interesting about this. Now, race car drivers, we have big egos. We don't like to be wronged, and we absolutely want to get even, right? And that's where I just feel like, though, this was an opportunity to win a race and a big race. The win at Darlington is a big deal in NASCAR, and that's one slipped through his fingers because of this.
Yeah, I think he just went for the move and was. I'd take him for his word on it. I mean, he went for the move. He was fully committed to it. I think he thought that he could either clear. Well, here's the thing: is I think the reason you fully commit to the move the way he did is because he was probably thinking, if I don't clear Kyle or make him lift, I'm not going to be able to pass him on the other side.
Yeah. You're not going to win this
race.
And so
that's why he fully committed the way he did. I don't think, I'm going all the way back to your point about the car, I don't agree with you that it's an aero issue. I think it's a tire issue. I think the reason we squeeze now the way that we do, the reason that the outside is vulnerable in that car, different than like in the Xfinity car, where the outside is even more of an advantage. I think the reason the outside is vulnerable is because the tire with the lower profile sidewall, the tire is on a razor's edge. It's it's just way edgier. And if something messes up your angle, mid corner, into the corner, off the corner, the recovery is way more difficult, right? And when you're in the outside lane, you have no space too, right? So not only do you have to have the perfect angle, it's a high pressure situation. You got to be back to the gas wide open, and you're only 6 inches from the wall. If anything screws up that angle, you're in trouble. You're hitting the wall or you're completely bailing out, right? So I think it's more of a tire thing than an aero thing for me. The aero thing has definitely plays a role.
I was going to say it has to have a role because in a truck you would have spun out. But like the way the 5 and the 1 got together that first time in a truck, the inside truck would have spun out by that point. In an Xfinity 100%, 100%. The inside car would have been so loose. It would have been, the inside cars would be such peril at that point. Yeah,
it plays a major role. So maybe I need to be careful here with what I'm saying. I guess what I'm really trying to say is I don't want to underappreciate the role the tire plays in this different tire, because it's such an edgier tire and it requires such a perfect corner shape to optimize and to be, to run. Where with the truck, the Xfinity car, the tire's just forgiving. It's got this tall sidewall. It's got a lot of flex to it. So the car can slide a lot more. And you can maneuver around a little bit more with it, where the Cup car, it's like stuck. You can see it on TV, right? The difference is on the fans. I mean, if you haven't noticed it before, and you're listening to me say it for the first time, watch a race. Watch the Xfinity race on Saturday, and then watch the Cup race, and tell me you don't see a difference in just the cars sliding around and moving around. The Cup cars are way more definitive about their line. They have to be committed to their line. They're tricky cars to drive.
There's not as many variables. It doesn't move around as much. It's not as like what's the term? It's not moving around, I guess, as much. But I have another term I'm forgetting. I'm not doing well with words today. I'm not doing the best of words. Well, I just think this is an interesting thing right now. And obviously, and I'm almost tired at this point of like Ross, aggression level and all that. But I think to me, what's more interesting is where else do we see the opportunity like we saw there, where you're choosing your restart position not to have the best run out of the corner always, right? Mm-hmm. But in where you can put your competitor in a compromising position because you watch these restarts at a lot of places. Think about Vegas, when this car last year was first there, and we've seen it a couple times. You run side by side for the lead for 5 laps after a restart, right? Because the aero effects of this car are so different than what we've seen in the past. So where do we start seeing the thought process change instead of the launch and what creates the best run off of the corner and aero positioning? And now it's like, okay, how can where do I need to be on the restart to position myself to actually put my competitor in a more compromising position where they have to make a decision whether to stick with that or crash? And I think this is going to be a running theme with this car.
We're already seeing it. I mean, that's I think, and I think Darlington is an extreme case, right? Because of how narrow turn 1 and 2 is, how polarizingly different those two lanes are. Where the outside lane is the preferred lane for speed, but it's also the most vulnerable lane for leverage, right?
Yep.
So, that's almost just creates this environment where the driver on the inside has to throw a haymaker, to have a chance, because the only leverage that the guy on the inside has is that ability to pinch the outside guy into the wall. Otherwise, if you can't pull it off, you're going to lose that run. You're going to lose the momentum you're going to lose the race to the guy on the outside. And in 3 and 4, you're going to lose the race to him on the outside in 3 and 4 too. So, you just don't even have the leverage over there like you do in 1 and 2 when you're on the bottom. So it's pretty polarizing track in terms of that conversation. But we see it a lot. You'll see it more often. And I mean, last year when Corey LaJoie, we've been talking about Corey LaJoie a lot on the pod, but last year when Corey LaJoie was, nearing his first win in Atlanta, it took just a little bit of a, he went to the outside of Chase Elliott, and Chase, all he had to do was just take away his line, and it didn't just hurt Corey's momentum, it wrecked him. Right? It took him out of the race. He couldn't even, it's not like he just slid out and lost a couple car lengths. It just put him in the fence. So for some reason, that car on the outside is pretty vulnerable right now.
And the Cup Series is a full contact sport, and it will continue to be. And it's only going to get tougher. That series is, in my opinion, the hardest in the world. Guess what? This coming weekend, something cool when we talk about classic stock car racing. North Wilkesboro for the NASCAR Cup Series All-Star Race. Plus the trucks are there. I'm going to be racing in that. I'm so pumped. But I can assure you, and I say this in full confidence, aside from the dirt race at Bristol, this is the lowest grip surface the NASCAR a NASCAR series will race that in ever, because it is unbelievable how little grip. So I got to do just a couple laps in a sim, simulating what current North Wilkesboro is, and let's just say I couldn't even believe it. And my crew chief Chris Carey has been calling me for a month, being like, "Hey, we need to be focused on. You just need to be focused on the lowest grip you've ever raced on, all this stuff." I'm like, yeah, how bad could it be? Like, we raced Darlington, we raced Richmond, whatever. Oh, my goodness. There's nothing like this. This is going to be insane. Like, I can't believe it.
Interesting. So, first of all, it's funny that you mentioned Bristol Dirt, because I actually texted a crew chief today, and I said, what is the traction rating at this track? And his response was Bristol Dirt. So I don't know if that's true or not. We'll find out. I think don't you get a report from NASCAR? Are they going to do a grip rating?
The friction test or whatever?
A friction test. That's what I was trying to think of. I texted him. I said, "What's the friction look like at North Wilkesboro?" And he said Bristol Dirt. So I am curious how low it is. Maybe it's probably still not quite Bristol Dirt, but it may not be far off.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's because what they're simulating. I haven't seen it. I'm going to maybe go up there this week for some of the late model races. I tried to race in some of the late model races, and the ride ahead fell through, unfortunately. But the thing to me is, like, if it's as old as they say, then that means like the asphalt is basically coming apart and must be almost like gravel. Like there's an air of like, like if it being in little rocks. So like it could be like dirt in that sense. So you're like in gravel basically.
Well, just there's no contact. There's no. So one of the most interesting thing when they give us these friction tests is they actually will do a scan of the track surface too. So they don't just test the friction, but sometimes you'll see a scan of the track surface, and you'll see these smoother tracks that have a lot of grip. They look perfectly smooth, like the scan will be something like this, and it's like a horizontal view of the surface, and then you'll see what the surface looks like at a place like Darlington, and it's just rocky, and you can tell just by looking at comparing two different surfaces, a Kansas versus a Darlington, or a Texas or something versus Darlington. The rocky one, just there's no contact patch. There's nothing for the tire to grip to. It's constantly on just smooth, polished, pointy rocks. So I drove this was a long time ago, but more than 10 years ago. But I drove a Cup car. I tested for the 48 team at North Wilkesboro 10 years ago, and even on sticker tires, I don't think I went full throttle down the straightaway.
That's what I've heard. You don't even. So Dale Earnhardt won a race there. He was. Andy Petrie was telling my crew chief Chris Carrier that they won a race there, and Dale's comment after, because Andy had told him like, "Hey, don't ever go full throttle in this thing. Trust me on this." And Dale's comment after the race was something like, "I've never passed so many cars in my life at partial throttle," because it's just like there is no grip, and you're in a corner, and this is going to be wild. I thought I saw it. I've got to go find it. They had an onboard, where it looked like they paved the apron though, which to me would then be like,
"Oh my god, Easter egg!"
Yeah, we're gonna run on the apron.
If there's fresh pavement anywhere, you will find it.
You will have to run on it. You'll have to.
Yeah, you'll have to be there. That will be wild. If there's a grip strip on the bottom, then they might SMI might get the old one-lane Bristol that they have always wanted.
So my thought is, in all these races, to win this coming weekend at North Wilkesboro, you will have found something others haven't. Or you will have at
because
least
there's
found
no
it earlier.
practice.
Yeah, and so it's going to be something like that. Oh, I found this grip area, or I found this ability to do this, or get my car like there's going to be something that we're all talking about next week here on this podcast that person found. I hope it's me. So I'm going to take you up on your notes from when you tested there, please. But I think that's really what I've thought about this. This is the type of race where someone's going to find that little thing, that little line, that little area, and they're going to use that to their advantage, and they're going to win.
Well, good luck.
Thanks, buddy. Well, that's a pod.
I will watch your truck race this week. I can't believe I didn't watch it last week. But.
Thanks. Well, I didn't put on much of a show, so didn't get the opportunity. Not like this one. This show's awesome. Thanks for listening. Definitely rate, review, subscribe, all those things. And I think we'll have some entertaining races this weekend.
All right.
Hey, before you go, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, click the bell icon below to be alerted to our latest videos. We also request that you let us know every single thing that we did wrong in this video or prior ones in the comment section below. We might just go through and answer them, or you'll make it to the next episode of the podcast or our next video. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to be able to listen to this podcast on the go. And subscribe to our newsletter at themoneylap.com to get the best 5 minutes in motorsports delivered directly to your email inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching. I didn't know you could even see it.